I'm Jacob Polacheck, and I'm joined now by Sports Illustrated college hoops reporter Kevin Sweeney to talk all things name, image, and likeness in the NCAA. Kevin, thank you for joining me.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So it's been almost 3 weeks since the NCAA's new name, image, and likeness rules came into effect. Really, what have been your initial impressions so far, and how have these 3 weeks compared to your expectations heading in?
Yeah, I think the best way I would describe it would be like a organized chaos. I think that was somewhat to be expected, given that we didn't wind up with a federal NIL bill through Congress that would have clarified some of the things. You have states figuring out, their own laws. Some states don't have laws, so the schools are making the law themselves. And you've had some differences across state lines of that nature. You've had some issues with brands, maybe taking advantage of athletes a little bit, or athletes taking advantage of brands a little bit. It's been kind of a feeling out process because it's an entirely new market, but it hasn't been in any way, catastrophic or, there hasn't been like a horrible thing that's happened from it. I think there was no idea like, oh my gosh, college sports are going to come crashing down if this happens. And it's exactly the same as it was 3 weeks ago.
And you talk about the craziness. I know that college athletes have right away started making the most of these new rules. One headline that caught my eye was the University of Miami, where they were offered every scholarship player on the football team $600 a month to endorse a company American Top Team. That was an instance I saw, but have there been any instances that you've seen so far that have really stood out to you? Anything that's caught your eye?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, financially, I haven't seen a bigger deal than the one that Hershey Miller, Master P's son, got from a tech company called Web Apps America. And if you do some digging, you're not really sure exactly what Web Apps America does. They're like web design. And I don't understand where they're getting a $2 million check to send to Hershey Miller. But that one was obviously a headline. I think to me, it's been more interesting to see, like you mentioned with the Miami situation, some of these more group type deals or deals that aren't meant just to do an Instagram ad and move on. Like that's been the primary thing is like, oh, people just like advertise stuff on Instagram or like they show up at an event and they get paid. Like I've been interested in some of the bigger stuff. The Miami thing was interesting. There've been a few examples. I know Graham Mertz in college football had a partnership for like a barbecue company for his whole offensive line. I thought that was interesting. And then I think the Barstool athletes thing is something that really has stood out as something because they have over 100,000 athletes tied to them in some form or fashion now. At least they claim to have 100,000 athletes from college athletics, and it's not entirely clear what they're getting other than like t-shirts and putting something in their Instagram bio. But Barstool has a way of dominating the conversation whenever they try to get involved, and they've certainly been an instigator in the conversation. Now, there is an potential issue there with the fact that Barstool is heavily tied to gambling, and gambling, there's a lot of state rules against doing name, image, likeness deals with gambling companies for college athletes. So that could be its own issue. But for now, I think Barstool has been, a major kind of conversation topic, and that all started on a whim.
Yeah, I would agree with you there that it isn't really clear from Barstool what these players are receiving per se. But I've talked to some of those Barstool athletes that have said that it's really about getting their name out there through Barstool. But we'll have to see. I know the gambling issue is a big one when it comes to name, image, and likeness. And kind of transitioning there, what would you say are some of the potential pitfalls that may come with with name, image, and likeness with NIL?
Well, I think there's two that really come to mind. One is that players will not understand the impact that some brand partnerships could have on their own personal brands. And I think the other thing will be kind of personal finance. From the player side, you could talk about how it'll impact team revenue and things of that nature. I don't think it's huge in that realm, but I think from a pitfall standpoint, I think there's a significant number of college athletes that are on Pell Grants, and the money that athletes are making will count against their annual income. So will that knock away a Pell Grant? And now they have to either pay more for school, as if they're on a partial, especially there's a lot of places that have partial scholarships for non-revenue sports. If you're on a Pell Grant, you're a soccer player, let's say, and you're on a Pell Grant, all of a sudden, oops, I made $10,000 more this year on name, image, likeness. Now I lose my Pell Grant. how does that impact your financial aid, all these things. So I think things like that could be an issue, and paying taxes, all those sorts of things. I mean, they're all minor things theoretically, but they're things that college athletes never had to worry about, and now they're going to have to worry about it in addition to playing their sport and going to class and having a college life, and all those things take up time. So curious about that, and I think also just kind of curious about how players deal with partnerships that may not acquit them well. I think we've seen kind of throughout business, like wanting to partner with people who share your values, and what happens if if a player says something that a brand that they're working with doesn't appreciate, or vice versa, a brand does something that the players don't appreciate. I think that's going to be an interesting kind of pitfall moving forward.
And then looking at it from the fans' perspective, from more of an outsider perspective, what do you think is the biggest thing that's being overlooked by spectators, by people that have been following this whole name, image, and likeness? What do you think is the biggest thing being overlooked when it comes to NIL?
I think the biggest thing that's kind of being missed is there's so much focus on big deals, right? Like, oh, someone's going to buy this person a car, someone's going to give this person $1 million to come play there, even though they're not totally allowed to do that. Like, it's going to destroy recruiting, it's going to destroy this. I think people are missing that, like, the 99% of name, image, and likeness stuff is going to be things like Instagram advertisements, running summer camps, cameo videos, whatever. I mean, $50, $100 here, $50, $100 there, but it adds up. And especially for a player who has, a significant following at a big school, I think you could see, someone make 50, 100 grand off of doing cameo and running summer camps and doing Instagram ads, and, so showing up and doing an autograph signing. These are all little things, but they'll add up. And I think especially in the, digital economy really quickly with, something like cameo, if, my favorite player has a great game, I can send him $50 to make me a 1-minute video. I just basically tipped him $50 for his game. I could see that becoming a really fun part of college athletics, and maybe the old head don't like that, but I think little things like that are really what's going to define name, image, likeness more than X player signing a $100,000 deal. I don't think that's going to be the big deal. I think it's going to be this little stuff that adds up over time.
Yeah, I'll definitely say that I think that this is really a trial period, and we're going to start to see how all of this name, image, and likeness is going to work over these next few years. And now, as we look towards this new college basketball season, obviously this NIL affects all of college sports, but you're a college basketball reporter. So what would you say are the lingering questions that you still have when it comes to NIL that you expect to be answered this coming season or this coming year?
Well, I think my first question, I don't know necessarily even that the question is the right word, but more just sort of storyline I'm following is there's this narrative out there that, like, players are going to get jealous of each other because one player makes more money than the other. And they already have playing time disputes. I think that's going to be the bigger issue, but how much are we going to see, there be chemistry issues from things like this? And I also think the biggest thing is I want to know how much a star player in college can make, because in college basketball, the conversation over the last 5 to 10 years has been, what are the other routes other than college basketball? Do you go to the G League? Do you sign a 2-way contract after a couple of years in college rather than get a full NBA deal and try to work your way into the league that way? Do you go to Australia? Do you play in the overtime elite league? There's so many options now for players to get $100,000, $500,000, maybe even $1 million. But that 100 to 500,000 seems like the sweet spot for someone in a 2-way contract, the G League, et cetera, after endorsements, things like that. Can a college star at a really high level program, think about Michigan with Hunter Dickinson, I think will be a good example of this. He's probably a 2-way contract guy. If he gets, if he goes to the league, how much money can he make in college being the big man on campus at Michigan, which is one of the big brands in college athletics? Can he make $100,000? Can he make $300,000? Because if he can, all of a sudden the financial balance of the decision of should I go pro when I'm a fringe prospect completely changes. And if that does, then we'll start to see a high level player stay in college for longer, which I think would be great for the sport.
Well, Kevin, it's always great talking to you about college basketball. You definitely are one of the best in the business. So where can people find your stuff, and where can people find your work?
Yes. My Twitter handle at CBB_Central is where I link most of my content. So you can just follow me over there. On my written work over at Sports Illustrated, SI.com. We've had a great group of people covering college athletics over there. So definitely check us out.